Food Global Forum and our session, Accelerating Innovation Through Collective Action. I'm Crystal Powers from the University of Nebraska Water Center and the Doherty Water for Food Global Institute. Many of today's challenges in water and food involve complex, interconnected systems with often hundreds or even thousands of individuals and organizations involved in management. This session will explore methods to engage across disciplines, priorities, and even geographies to find the best paths forward. We'll start by looking at diffusion of innovation theory with Dr. Nathan Connor from the University of Nebraska. Then I'll look at a case study from here in Nebraska, and we'll wrap up with a look at how the Doherty Water for Food Global Institute views working together to accelerate innovation. Enjoy.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Nathan Connor, and I'm an associate professor of agricultural education at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. I am happy to be speaking with you today on the topic of diffusions of innovations. The diffusions of innovations is a very important topic for the Water for Food Global Forum. Because as we all know, as we strive to work with organizations, agricultural producers, and scientists to help solve water and food security, we run into barriers. And the barriers come into the form of people. As we know, people are messy. So I'm going to present today a little information that I think you could use as a lens to structure some of your programming and your conversations and actions as you work with organizations, individuals, community groups, agricultural producers, and scientists to help solve the water and food security challenges that we face. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you today. I've titled our topic today is using the innovation decision process to promote social change for water quality and food security. Everything I share with you today is based on the Diffusion of Innovations by Everett Rogers. I have the citation for the textbook if you would like to learn more about Rogers' diffusion of innovation theory. Today, we're going to focus on the innovation decision process. I've included the definition of innovation decision process because I think it's critical when thinking about how innovations affect people's lives and how people choose whether or not to adopt or reject innovation. So the innovation decision process is the process through which an individual or other decision-making unit, this could be a community organization, it could be an agricultural co-op, it could be an NGO, but it's a unit that passes from first knowledge of an innovation to forming an attitude toward the innovation, to a decision to adopt or reject that innovation, to implementation of that particular innovation, and then the use of the new idea and to the confirmation stage of the decision. Rogers defines an innovation as any idea, concept, technology, process that may be new to an individual or to a particular group. An innovation is not always new and novel to everyone, but it may be new to the community you're working with. It may be new to the agricultural producers or the scientists that you're working with. So I wanted to show you a model of the 5 stages in the innovation decision process. This model, like I mentioned, has 5 stages: knowledge, persuasion, decision, implementation, and confirmation. So let's start with the knowledge stage. This is where an individual or a group or a community learn about the innovation for the first time. During this knowledge stage, the individual is going to gather information and they're going to start to try to understand how the innovation works. What does the process look like? Now, there's many characteristics that can affect the knowledge portion of the innovation decision process. For example, socioeconomics plays a part in the knowledge portion, as well as personality variables and communication behavior. So if you're working with a group of individuals and you understand how they communicate, whether it's through social media, whether it's through telephone, whether it's through reading newspaper, you're better able to make sure that that innovation reaches the community or the individuals you're targeting because you understand their communication behavior. Likewise, if you know the group of individuals that you're targeting does not have reliable internet access, you may have to use a different communication channel to help convey your message of that innovation to that particular group. After the knowledge stage comes the persuasion stage. So during this persuasion stage, this is the time period where the change agent is trying to convince the individual or the organization to adopt the change. So during this stage, a change agent could try to teach the group about the advantage of this new innovation. How is it going to make their life easier? Is it going to give them more free time? Is it going to give them healthier water to drink that is safe? Is it going to give them access to food? What's the relative advantage of adopting the particular innovation you're talking about? And then compatible. Is this innovation compatible with their lifestyle? Is it compatible with their culture? Is it going to work for their profession? And another thing not to overlook is complexity. Sometimes individuals or groups choose to reject an innovation because they perceive it as too complex. So this is an opportunity to help the individuals learn how to use the innovation and make it a little less scary, make it seem more compatible into their lives, but make it seem less complex. Now, another characteristic of the persuasion stage is triability. If you have a particular innovation that you are trying to sell or push to a certain group or a community, do those individuals have an option to try it? Is it easy to try out? Or is it something that once they try it, they're committed to it for a year? So for example, if there's a new internet service that's being tested out in a certain community, do I have to sign up for a year contract where I'm stuck with that service for a year? Or can I try it for a month and decide if I like it with a full refund? So triability becomes an important part in the persuasion stage. And then observability. Individuals want to be able to see that innovation works. Is it something that is tangible? Is it something that they can see working or not working? That's going to lead into the next stage, which is the decision. In the decision stage, the individual or community group or organization has to make a decision. And the decision is either going to be able to adopt the innovation or reject the innovation. Now, if you look at this model, you can see that a group could adopt the innovation and then quit using the innovation and reject it later, or they can initially reject the innovation and adopt it at a later time. But after they make a decision, they have to actually implement the innovation in their life, in the workplace, in their community, in their organization. Once that implementation is done, the individual or the group has to confirm their decision. So they either are going to be to confirming it in the sense that they are glad they made a decision and this innovation is fruitful, or they may start over and they may decide that they made the wrong decision and go back and reject the innovation. After spending a few minutes talking about the model, the 5 stages, the innovation decision process, I challenge you in your work to look at this model. When you get ready to go work with agricultural producers, scientists, and other people in your fields and community members, take a look at the 5 stages of the innovation decision process. And as a change agent, how could you alter what you're doing to help promote the change in a positive way? Are there things that you could do at the knowledge stage by introducing the innovation to the group of people that you're focused on? Is there anything you could do differently that could help persuade use of the innovation and help show the advantage in people's lives, in their work, in the health of their families? What could you do differently? Because if we focus on these 5 stages and we focus our development work on being better change agents, we have a greater chance of helping people solve their challenges when it comes to food and water security. I only had a few minutes to talk with you today. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity for this presentation. I completely know that there's a lot of information that surrounds the diffusions of innovations. I am happy to talk with anyone more about this theory and how to apply it in your work in relation to food and water security. Please feel free to contact me as you see fit. Thank you for this opportunity and have a great day.
The number and complexity of challenges facing our world can be overwhelming. When individual organizations attempt to tackle the most daunting problems, success stories are all too rare. Many innovative approaches have been tried, too few have worked. However, when organizations work together under the right conditions, they can accomplish great things. One particularly effective means of collaboration is collective impact. Using the collective impact approach, a number of complex social challenges have been addressed and some remarkable results have been achieved. Youth incarcerations dropped by 45% in just 3 years, with no change in public safety, improving the lives of thousands of youths. 6,000 public housing residents were placed in new jobs during the recession. More than 1,000 acres were restored and over 280 million pounds of pollution voluntarily reduced to conserve and restore a river. Organizations utilizing a collective impact approach do the following: agree to a common goal, agree to track progress in the same way, which allows for continuous improvement, do what each does best while identifying new ways to work together, have consistent communication, and finally, have skilled and dedicated resources to support ongoing efforts. The world's toughest challenges aren't going away. In fact, many experts predict they will continue to grow in both number and complexity. Solving these problems requires a range of expertise from a number of diverse organizations. Collective impact is a proven approach, helping organizations work together to move mountains.
Hello, I'm Crystal Powers. I work at the Nebraska Water Center, the Doherty Water for Food Global Institute, and the University of Nebraska Extension. I'm excited to share with you today about how we're approaching the complex challenge of nitrates in Nebraska's water. You've heard several sessions, or in several other sessions, about this challenge for the state. And so I want to share how we're structuring a network of organizations and people across the state to address this challenge. First, we're going to do a really quick why of we decided to tackle this systematic challenge, then how we figured out what needs to be done, and then how we organize ourselves to get it done. So first off, how do we establish a compelling vision to bring everyone on board? Nitrate connects us globally with a challenge of excess nutrients that's seen all across the world. And here within Nebraska, it's widespread across our state, with many areas being above the safe drinking water level and others trending in the same direction. It connects us to our core values. We're trying to feed the world through high production agriculture, but at the same time, we want to ensure a high quality of life for those of us living in Nebraska, the legacy of our rural farmers and places, and that our small towns are vital and growing into the future. It connects us across disciplines. So on campus, we've got, here at the university, we've got over 80 faculty in many different disciplines across different departments, and even different university campuses working on addressing this issue. It connects us across scales. So everything from soil and gut health at the microbial level to human systems, field scale, ag innovations, water quality impacts across the state or across the nation, or planetary climate drivers of how those will impact our future nitrogen management. And it connects us across time. Immediately, we've got private well owners that may or may not know if they have safe drinking water and need to find out how to filter and test that water. In the near term, we've got small communities all across the state that are approaching that safe drinking water limit. And so we'll need to invest in very expensive water filtration, and what are the implications for our rural spaces. And then long-term changes that we make in the ag and agricultural fields and landscape level changes will take 5 to even 50 years before some of those changes impact the groundwater beneath them. So how do we think about addressing this very complex systemic challenge? I'm going to use a structure from a publication called The Water's a Systems Change that was done by Kayana, Kramer, and Singh in 2018, and they talk about 6 conditions for systems change. So it starts out at a structural, explicit level of policies, practices, and resource flows. And then in the middle, we've got relationships and power dynamics. And then finally, the most transformative level of change is when we can think differently through different mental models on how to address a problem. So to apply this to the nitrate challenge, if we look at policies, we'll go through these quickly, but you can apply this to any complex challenge. So if you look at policies, we've got local, state, and federal agricultural and natural resource policies impacting how nitrate and agricultural practices get done, including our federal farm bill and international trade policies. So there's far-reaching implications. There's the practices themselves of what gets done in the field. There's agricultural practices, and then what happens in community and private well systems. And then we talk about resource flows. So most of the ones I identify here are funding mechanisms. So we have taxing structures at the local, state, and federal level. Including in Nebraska, our local natural resource districts have taxing authority, as well as the people and educational and research endeavors that are undertaken using funds that started out as a taxing program. There's granting programs, and private industry partnerships. And then to acknowledge the big scale, we've got how commodity and specialty markets influence what growers do in the field, as well as input pricing. Then if we look at that middle tier of how relationships and power dynamics impact this, I couldn't really untangle these because all of these involve both. And so I just listed some examples of elected governance allows the general public to have power within our system, both at the local, state, and federal levels, with Nebraska's natural resource districts being governed by locally elected boards. And then all of these entities use extensive public input process to make sure that people's voices are heard through monthly meetings and advisory boards. In our Northeast Nebraska example that we'll talk about in one of our sessions called the Bazille Groundwater Management Area, they're organized through a steering committee, which is a multi-sector steering committee that makes decisions for that area. We have citizen science programs that connect the general public into science endeavors. And then we put on events that bring all these sectors into the same spaces to have conversations and build those relationships and connections. And then finally, at that mental model level, this is when we can connect how we're addressing our challenge to things like shared values, the legacy that we have in our farm and communities, pride in their workmanship, conservation ethics. Does it fit with the group identity? Do we divide and conquer? Do we think about how we're all in this together as Nebraskans or globally? And then what is our vision for success? What does it look like to be a successful farmer, a successful community? So with that, how do we start to organize all these large groups to have impact? So we're going to talk about building partners as well as internal connections. So you can think internally how to structure and with outside partners. For this, I'm going to use a theory that's based out of Stanford Social Science Review, and they have an organization called Collective Impact Forum. So this is a process that I shared in a video earlier about how we get many organizations working together. And so they have 5 principles of having a common goal, shared measurement, reinforcing activities, continuous communication amongst the group, and then a backbone organization of how you go about convening and structuring the process. So as an example of how we've done kind of that backbone and communication piece in the last few years around this topic, we started out with people have been working on this here in Nebraska for decades. So I want to acknowledge that both internally at the university and partnerships across sectors, this is not a new endeavor. It's reimagining how those groups have been working together. So on the academic side, we've had our faculty groups meet. We've structured around water and innovative cropping systems, which is that WICS piece. And so we meet regularly to talk about how do we bring our academic resources to bear on this topic. And then on the partnership side, the university partnered with our several local natural resource districts in the northeast part of the state to do more education and outreach in that area through Bazille demonstration project. And then during that, we've also had a statewide conference focused on particularly on the nitrate issue that brought many people, several hundred people from different sectors together to talk about best practices and how we move forward. And then that's kind of culminated in what we're calling our Nebraska nitrate strategy meetings. So this was to establish those overarching goals and then working groups to get them done. So during that strategy process, we've had over 45 organizations and over 100 people involved from all different sectors. And so this was very intentional to reach out to the agricultural sector, the academic sector, local, state, and federal partners, as well as the private sector and NGOs that are interested in this topic to find ways that we can partner and move forward together. So the outcome of that first meeting was to come up with this common goal. What can we all agree on? And the goal that we all agreed upon was that all Nebraskans will have access to safe water. So that's something that's measurable and we can put a time on. And to do that, they established 3 working groups that are critical to it, where we can bring together data from this problem and then dialogue on how we actually address it. So the first working group was around awareness, with their focus, with their overarching goal being to connect Nebraskans to actionable information about their water quality. And the education working group is to find ways to increase the motivation and abilities of Nebraskans to change their behavior to address this issue. And finally, the nitrate policy working group, their overarching goal was to encourage equitable adoption of behaviors to address this issue. So those groups finished this spring and are now moving into the implementation phase. And as a preview of what we'll be talking about in the Brazil focus case study, I want to show how on the academic side, we're thinking about these reinforcing activities of how do we bring many people together to talk about extension and research from our side. So we've got 25 faculty working in this specific area in the northeast part of our state to talk about how do we address this issue in this place. And so we've got folks working on the health aspects, how nitrogen moves in the environment, addressing how fertilizer is used on the farm, and then conservation practices to improve or to reduce the amount of nitrogen loss. And then finally, educational activities and behavior change. So with that, I will stop there and we'll look forward to hearing more details about this in some of the upcoming sessions. The challenge that we are putting forth to all of our Nebraska partners is that we can be uniquely positioned to be the global leader in addressing groundwater nitrates. And can we take up that challenge? Thank you. And I'll look forward to seeing you at the live session with any questions.
Oh, there was a variety of things that drew me to DWFI. The vision and mission, the bold vision and mission of the Institute to address water and food security issues at a global level, but with a local focus as well. It was also the credibility of being a state that had a highly developed agricultural system, as well as really focused on managing its water resources very well, and a university that had many of the specialists. And this emphasis on impact, which really resonates with me and my career in research, but also development and seeing change on the ground.
What drew me to the Institute was the opportunity to help build a well-funded institute with a noble mission of water and food security. I was a professor at Utah State and in irrigation engineering, and this opportunity of leadership came at the right point in my career. And Nebraska is a state with a lot of irrigated area. In fact, it's the largest irrigated area in the country. And so it was very appealing to come and help build the Institute and work on its mission. Another aspect of the Institute that drew me here was the possibility of doing international work. And so I had had several overseas experiences in my previous assignment, and the opportunity to build and continue and grow that aspect was very appealing. If we develop methods of improving water productivity, improving the use of water and fertilizers, and take it to scale in the U.S. production system, a lot of this will be exportable to other countries and really will be important to creating or making agriculture carbon neutral in the future.
You need to think bigger. And as a result of that, there were several conversations along those lines of how can we really put Nebraska on the map? You know, how do we put together a #1 type organization? And I think of this, you know, always in terms of Nebraska, always wanting to be #1 in anything. And so that was the tone of the conversations, and it took a number of conversations prior to the announcement and the development of the Institute. And that was actually the first conference, and why there was a conference so many years ago, to gather folks together and even discuss whether we should even have an institute. And so I remember that first conference because it was at Hardin Hall, and so many people were interested that there wasn't even place to eat. We had to eat in a tent out in the parking lot. And one of the other things about that conference was that it was incredibly inclusive, and that's been another theme of Institute events from the very beginning, is that, you know, between the university, international partners, students, partners from off campus, everybody needs to be at the table to share their perspective. So that led to Bob Doherty meeting with Moens Bai and J.B. Milliken, and basically it was a very immediate decision. And without that gift and some of the initial folks putting their weight behind that, the Institute from the very early on, like Jeff Rakes, spoke at another conference early on. And that, again, all these folks got us on the international radar.
Well, Nebraska offers a great opportunity for research, applied research, as I mentioned, because of the irrigated area and because it's in a transition of precipitation, right, between the arid west and the rain-fed agriculture in the east. And so there's a range of soils and climate in Nebraska, which for an irrigation engineer and water manager is an opportunity to study how to manage water better. In addition, Nebraska has a very strong extension program through the University of Nebraska-Lincoln that presence is felt throughout the state. And that's an opportunity to test different methods, to work with farmers, and spread the message of your research, and allows the Institute to have a bigger impact by working with extension and of course with the faculty of the University of Nebraska, which is very strong in agriculture in general.
Well, Nebraska is a living laboratory in terms of the agriculture and water management. Here is a major attraction. We certainly can work in this environment. We can do a lot of research here, and again, then as we translate that into other parts of the world to understand what is missing, what can we do more of in other parts of the world, and how can we bring some of the lessons back from elsewhere. So I think the flexibility of the way the Institute's set up, that we engage here in Nebraska, but we also engage in different parts of the world, is something that we're quite uniquely positioned to do. I think things that won't change, I think the flexibility and our capacity to be nimble and really address the issues. In the water and food space, things change, and we see we have to adapt to the challenges in front of us, whether it's changing climate or it's transforming our food systems. We need to be positioned to really work with the decision makers, do the leading edge research, and help support those changes on the ground. In terms of how we structure, again, we draw on a deep bench of faculty fellows here working in many different disciplines, and the extended network of our partners. I see that being strengthened and further developed, but really the change is to how can we better take our research to impact? How can we keep developing the impact pathway to really make changes on the ground and be responsive to the needs of those people on the ground?
Well, in the future, I think what we're working on now is going to expand the issue of nitrogen fertilizer and nitrates and the environmental impact of agriculture, how to manage water and nitrogen and fertilizer better in the future, coupled with greenhouse gas emissions, decreasing greenhouse gas emissions, and capturing more carbon in these agricultural systems. So I think this is going to be a line of research in the future, and both are combined, right? With digital agriculture, data mining, implements, spatial application of fertilizer, for example, in the field, where you only apply water and fertilizer where it's needed, thus decreasing the emissions of nitrous oxide, which is a potent greenhouse gas. And that would be important for the future carbon market, because in addition to developing and introducing systems, production systems that fix more carbon, if you decrease the nitrous oxide, that means the farmers get more carbon credits, and that means more money in their pockets in the future. So I think this is a line of research which we are developing right now in the Institute with several faculty fellows, and several of the directors are involved, and I believe this is one of the areas that's going to progress further.